So, dear colleagues, this is the third day. Let me start the recording as well. Hello, dear colleagues and dear community. This is the third day of the conference today, and we had two really wonderful and productive days before. We had really substantial, interesting, and speeches full of different senses, layers of sense. Today we are going on with our work. We have the interpreters, Yuri and Andriy, not Vitaly, as it was told, and we thank them for their work and their interpretation. So, dear colleagues, today we are beginning our work with the section which is devoted to the description and the image of war of Russia against Ukraine in the interdisciplinary perspective. So I give the virtual mic to Dr. Mariana Levytska, who will be the chair of this panel. Please, Mariana, the floor is yours. Thank you, Svetlana. I welcome all of you. If I may, I would speak English because we planned it beforehand. Part of the speeches would be in English, part of them in Ukrainian, but our discussant, Iryna, and I were planning to speak English, so I think we would do the same as we planned.
Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues in the USA and in the Ukraine or abroad. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today. I am Mariana Levytska, Associate Professor of the Ukrainian Academy of Printing and also PhD in Art History. First of all, I want to thank the conference organizers for the opportunity to organize this session, which focused on the variety of artistic responses to the war in Ukraine. Before starting our panel, I would like to outline briefly some essential theoretical frames. In the last decades, interest in works of art as aesthetic forms has been replaced by interest in them as representations of meaning. By changed subject matter, I mean both the addition of works of art not previously considered art historically significant and a shift in attention to different aspects of studied works. By change in methodology, I mean using different means than before to answer new kinds of issues that are raised. This session proposes to consider the issue of the responses of artists to the war in Ukraine as a personal experience, self-reflection, or a collective means of resisting the enemy or overcoming disasters. This response is expressed in various artistic forms, such as cinema, music, fine arts, and even digital mass culture in its verbal and visual messages. This is about the intermediate platform for the inquiry into the recent Ukrainian art of wartime. What about the interdisciplinarity of our session? I want to quote Professor Bridget Alsdorf from Princeton University, an art historian. Art history is interdisciplinary by nature because art intersects with so many aspects of culture and the natural world: politics, social history, science, literature, theater, philosophy, economics, the environment, and more. These intersections present themselves not only in an artwork's subject matter and form, but also in its life in the world. When documenting and studying wartime art in Ukraine, most researchers are convinced that it is necessary to involve method and approaches of the wide sphere of humanities, such as anthropology, communication, psychology, art history, and sociology, that help explore art practices of resistance and their culture-dependent meaning. So, this is the purpose of our session. After the presentation, the discussant of our session, Dr. Iryna Baltaziuk, will open the discussion and will draw certain conclusions, I hope. I have to remind all the presenters about the 15-minute time limit. So let me introduce our first speaker, Dr. Oksana Smorzhevska, Associate Professor of the Department of Modern History of Ukraine, Taras Shevchenko, Kyiv National University. She is the author of the illustrated anthology National Traditions of the Ukrainian Avant-Garde. She is a non-residential visiting scholar at the Indiana University of this year cohort. The topic of her presentation is the mythology of war, art images and meanings. Dr. Smorzhevska, the floor is yours, please.
Дуже дякую. Я ще раз повторю, я надіслала
Thank you
свій
so much. Let me repeat. I've sent my text already on the 15th of March. So somehow it really vanished. So could you please check whether you have it in the email? Okay, I think all of you who has joined this conference, such an interesting days of speeches. I listened to them as much as I could, and I'd like to express my gratitude to esteemed Sarah that you were so sincerely and generously sharing your trip to Mexico. I even showed some of the pictures at the lectures. They were really impressed by the pictures of the tomb of Lev Trotsky. That's something incredible that we can see such topics in the space. My topic is Mythology of War, Artistic Images and Meanings. As it was already mentioned, through the art, through poetry, paintings, music, we can convey the images of this new kind of a mythology that is being created before our eyes. And thanks to the possibilities of the internet, this fixation of artistic images and meanings is rapidly spreading among different groups of people, influencing moods and shaping certain value orientations and moods of society. Therefore, the prompt response of scholars to collect, systematize, and reflect on the mythology of war through the artistic prism is also an important aspect of socio-humanitarian research. After all, in the rapid flow of information, the kaleidoscope of artistic comprehension of the mythology of war requires both verification and cataloging for the creation of museum expositions, presentations, creative performances, and many other events. So, in fact, since the first days of the Russo-Ukrainian War, we have had an artistic reaction to these events, and especially artistic reflections intensified after the 24th of February 2022. This full-scale invasion, which everyone even expected for but hoped it would not happen, was both a shock and an impetus for active action simultaneously. I will try to systematize the artistic images available in the public space, primarily on the internet. Those artistic images that appeared and were formed in the conditions of war. I separated just formally, formally, several vectors. The creation of new myths. Among them we have the Ghost of Kyiv, Red Forest, Zmiyiny or Snake Island, Chernobyevka, Gods of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Azovstal. I think that many people don't even need explanation about these words. They are already symbols. This new military mythology is based on a weaving of images from contemporary culture, Ukrainian history, and archaic ideas in the primary sense of the word. They all have their authors, and they are rapidly gaining the status of folklore. All of these images are intended to demonstrate the strength, power, reliability, nobility of Ukraine's defenders, and to evoke a sense of pride and patriotism. For example, the legend of the Ghost of Kyiv has gone far beyond Ukraine, becoming the subject of discussion and publications in various foreign media. From the very first hours of the full-scale invasion, the Ghost of Kyiv captured the minds of people who watched with bated breath the combat successes of the Ghost of Kyiv against enemy aircraft. His image gained more and more details, Eventually, it was suggested, there was an assumption that it was not one person, but a group of ace pilots. And it was only in the autumn of 2022 that the name of the Ghost of Kyiv was made public. The group of pilots was led by Colonel Mikhailo Matyushenko, with the surname Grandfather, who in 2014 moved all our serviceable aircraft from Crimea to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Russian occupiers. This was one of the most experienced pilots in Ukraine, and who unfortunately died in the skies over the Black Sea in June 2022. But his body was only brought back home on the 2nd of October, so the farewell to the legendary Ghost of Kyiv took place on the 3rd of October, which is very symbolic, in his native Bucha near Kyiv. As for the Ghost of Kyiv, even there are songs composed and there is a chevron designed. The Ghost of Kyiv also appeared in flight simulators. He became a manga character in Japan. Also, the image of Ghost of Kyiv is also embodied in the statuette over the Shukai search project and in a mural in Podil. And also, a very powerful emotional impact onto the listeners is played by the poem written by the actor Mikhailo Kukuyuk with the name I Am a Dog of Azov, nicknamed Witch. I will not quote it. If you're interested, I can send you the link. It can take too much of time. The second sphere is the appeal to archetypal images of Ukrainian culture, to archaic layers of our worldview, actualized in the context of a full-scale war. In this context, I can mention, for instance, a series of paintings of Oleg Shuplyak, which has the name Androphags in Ukraine, or the video Feed the Fish, Peter, which plays on the image of a nymph, Mavka, who, hummingly the melody, Oh, there is a red viburnum in the meadow, destroyed the inhabitants of the cultural capital, you do understand which capital we mean, in revenge for the tortured Ukrainian towns and villages. But perhaps the most resonant in this sense was this famous, without exaggeration, really famous curse song, Let It Be to You, Enemy, as the Witch Says. This poetic curse was written by Lyudmila Horova, although there was a discussion on social media about this, as the words were attributed to folk art, but it's obvious that someone had to compose that, right? So the lyrics were set to music by a vocalist with the Rivne band Angie Kreda, Angelina Katarzinska, and the singer came across Lyudmila Horova's lyrics during an air raid when she and her mother were hiding in a cellar in the village. The lyrics first became known, which were in several versions of performance and popularized on the internet. The first time the lyrics appeared online on the 22nd of April 2022. Later, the song became extremely popular. In addition to the official video performed by Angie Kreda Band, there are a number of other videos and other options of performances. This song has truly become a national curse against the Russian occupiers. Such videos usually show modern Ukrainian witches performing fortune-telling or acts on the same theme, and they play with archaics and modern events. The lyrics are also translated into English, and a video clip for this song featuring Ukrainian female defenders was presented on the Day of Defenders of Ukraine. We can also identify some of the male options of this song. Let it be the enemy, as Zaluzhny says, but this is a different option. Also, we can separate certain trends that characterize the peculiarities of artistic reflections on the events of the war. I would say there is a kind of glamorization of war images, humor and satire, which supports people. Seems in the previous days of the work of the conference, we were speaking in more details about that, like the images of the cats of the armed forces, cats of the defense ministry, cats of the territorial defense, of the volunteers. And we can see at the same time vulgarization, the use of profanity, though this wave has decreased already. We can also see dehumanization of the enemy by caricaturing images of the occupiers, calling them anything but Russian occupiers. The most disseminated names are orcs, Rusnya, TikTok troops, and so on. This is also a defensive response, not to name the enemy with his or her real name. We can also see a powerful array of songwriting, both the creation of new songs and the popularization of existing ones. March of the New Army, oh, there is a red verbonum in the meadow, which is the most popular, and it has gone much beyond Ukraine. And we can see a number of bright artistic author projects where the authors capture their artistic vision of events, organization and holding of various art exhibitions, projects aimed at demonstrating not only the war, but also the new, renewed Ukraine. This is, for instance, the exhibition in Alte Münze in Berlin in May 2022, and then it continued in other European cities. And also there have been initiated series of artistic projects by the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy and the State Agency of Ukraine for Arts and Art Education. And let me emphasize again that this systematization is only an attempt to outline the incredibly diverse array of artistic practices that cover the mythology, the modern mythology of the Russo-Ukrainian War. The forms of artistic reflection are diverse. It is not only the usual format of a song or a drawing. Murals have become popular as a form of contemporary monumental art. Sectors of artistic culture such as design, video games, fashion, VR technologies, and digitized museums are actively developing. Images of Ukrainian mythology intertwined with elements of contemporary culture and events in the war have also been actively used in advertising projects. For example, the video for the chocolate, handmade chocolate and sweets shop is a mini film where a modern day Solocha, accompanied by the song As the Witch Says, prepares incredibly delicious chocolate and sweets, orders them for the victory. And also, the artistic meanings of the war mythology are characterized by their acute social themes aimed at capturing the experience of war by different groups of war participants: children, women, the elderly, people with limited mobility, animals. We can list the series of drawings Souls by the artist Olga Wilson, embroidered panels by Masha Shubina, paintings, postcards and posters, diaries of Zion Kota by Lesia Baldi. So art shows the world that the war is not something abstract, something from a history textbook or a news feed. This is our present, hellishly scary and horrifying in its everyday life. This is a dirty hand with a bright manicure, all that is left of a human being, an incredible ray of sunshine over the outstretched arms of an Azov-style defender, and the crying eyes of a Crimean dog who lost his entire human family as a result of an enemy missile strike.
So, in terms of social reflections, we can also mention this martial law project as part of the project Deepening Internal Cultural Dialogue in Ukraine. There's 100 authors who write 100 essays about their own experiences of war. We can also talk about the applied significance of the mythology of war, namely the use of the images in various sectors of the economy. There were stamps with images and phrases accompanying the well-known phrase about the direction of the Russian warship, then dog patrol candies, shopping bags and t-shirts with images of the Konotop, which the bracelets made of steel from Azovstal. So we can see that the spectrum is extremely wide. This process is still ongoing. So, but we still need to register all this in order not to, not to forget this, because later on we will be able to identify what is the most important, what's not. We'll take a look at some of the narratives, make sure that we memorize some of the aspects. So the current work of gathering all this, I believe, is truly important as of today. Thank you for your attention. Now, that was briefly my statement. Well, thank you, Oksana. You were ideal in terms of the time slots, because I took some moments of your time. So big thanks to you. And I would like to have the next statement.
Iryna Baltaziuk, who is a practicing artist and researcher. She is also a founder of the NGO Art Research Platform MOKONSHU in Kyiv, Ukraine. She is also non-resident fellow at the George Washington University and non-residential visiting scholar at Indiana University, Bloomington. She suggests the review of recent Ukrainian art manifestation, where language was used as a symbol of indomitability. So I invite you, dear Iryna, I invite you to a presentation, please.
Дякую, пані Маріанно, дякую,
I
Сарі.
thank Mariana, thank Sarah, thank everyone for this wonderful opportunity, to have to participate in all of these initiatives for already the second year. Now, with your permission, I would like to share my presentation. Hopefully you can hear this presentation, or you can see rather this presentation. Can you see the presentation? Can you let me know? Okay, hopefully that's the case. So the topic of my presentation is language as a symbol of indomitability and review of recent Ukrainian art manifestations. The impetus for my research was the 24th of February. I guess that was common to many people, because that marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Ukraine. And working with documentation as a key task, I use symbols to talk about the complex political and social processes that started in Ukraine and that are currently affecting the whole world. Now, the main goal of my work is to explain those complex processes and to make that through the symbols in art. Among the tools associated with the processes of forming unity, strengthening identity, and a sense of belonging to a nation, well, the language becomes one of the most powerful symbols. One of the main symbols of indomitability that has acquired a new connotation today is the word. The symbol of the Ukrainian word is used by artists in various types of fine arts, visual arts, and spatial arts, including painting, graphics, sculptures, installations, video arts, etc. Often, the word becomes an independent image with a holistic sound that does not require any other means of representation or explanation. After February 24th, 2022, the desire to speak has reached a critical point in the artistic environment, which has led to the emergence of works where the word is the main kind of environment, the main image, and the key symbol in the desire to demonstrate the limitless power of the word in confronting the enemy. Ukrainian artists constantly turn to the multifaceted Ukrainian language. In addition to a strong sense of belonging to the nation, the use of language for the Ukrainian people is, above all, a force that has united our society, making it invisible at the face of a much stronger enemy. The Ukrainian word is also a kind of a code of the nation, which helps to identify either friend or foe. After 2014, the appeals to language as a peaceful weapon became more frequent and more obvious, particularly after the 24th of February. By carefully selecting words or expressions, artists using their artistic means to enhance their symbolic meaning, which helped this significantly to expand the sphere of their influence, resonating with foreign community. And today we're witnessing the political function of art becoming to the forefront, reflecting important processes and challenges in the society. Now, contrary to the statement that art is mostly outside of politics, we can see rather the opposite situation. For example, the project by Mikita Kadan with outspoken slogans protesting against the war was created specifically for the exhibition of the Vienna Association. And it has become a very prominent one. The works from the repeating speech series, such as Close the Sky, Stop Putting Cheap Gas, Cheap Blood, etc., that were actively used during the protests against Russia's invasion, endlessly reproduce political language in art. The desire to be heard makes artists create their own visual language, using only words. There's public performances, blind manifestos, appeals, etc. For example, the artist Daria Pughachova organized a performance called Cities of War, that's the third photo, close to the International Court of Justice in The Hague on the last day of public hearings on the case of genocide charges under the Convention of the Prevention, Punishment for Genocide. The artist stayed inside a glass cube for several hours in a row, writing on its walls, "The war in Ukraine still in process." In any case, collective anger accumulates and finds its outlet in words, and we can clearly see this in the example of the project Olha Fedorova and her exhibition called Love Range. She spent the beginning of the war in the basement in Kharkiv, documenting the war, writing texts, shooting videos. She was writing poems. She started streams on international channels. So all of these feelings were reflected in her texts. That was horrible, difficult, but true one. Or we can also mention Tatiana Korneeva's performance, which is all about the collective anger, and it's important that it took place in Germany. Now, there's a significant number of artistic testimonies about the war. There's diaries, albums, art books. One of them is the Ukrainian diary, which brought together more than 200 artists from Ukraine, and it will open in a week at the Ukrainian House in the heart of Kyiv. And then it will also present a book, a large book, that includes not only the artworks, but also texts, diaries, and testimonies of the war. Artists have also learned to speak with a metaphor of dumbness about the war. Now, to be silently heard, they create really profound works and profound statements. For example, it could be 10-hour performance or 5-hour performance reflecting our feelings about the war. For example, this was the 10-hour long performance by Maria Mityashova, and for 10 hours long she was kind of packing and unpacking her suitcase. It's about the lives of refugees, forced migrants, and about constant displacement or going from one place to another place. Then there was a 5-hour-long Maria Proshkovska performance, Farina, about the fate of Ukrainian grain. Then there was a silent performance of Polina Kuznetsova in a cage on the second photo, and it took place in the Freedom Square in Tallinn. And she closed herself in a cage together with another artist from Mariupol in order to draw international attention to human rights and about their constant violation during the war. There was another performance by the same artist on the first floor, and it took place in the pool amidst the lake. Okay. And it was all about the dam in South in 2022. Through such artistic manifestos and international projects that engage artists from in other countries in a common expression, well, people feel commonality, they feel engagement to these events, which is important. The last, but not the least, is the return of Ukrainian art, meaning the identification of Ukrainian art in international museums and recognized art galleries. For example, the words Ukrainian artist and the captions of paintings also works in favor of identifying Ukraine as an independent and sovereign country in a global context. Now, one of the first examples of that was renaming the Degas dancers. Now, in March 2022, almost a month after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion, the National Gallery of London renamed Degas' painting Russian dancers to Ukrainian dancers. A year ago, a Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, which has one of the most complete collections of Kazimir Malevich's work, changed its captions to finally call him a Ukrainian artist. And these processes became possible thanks to the concerned Ukrainian community, cultural and artistic figures, and community who seek to restore the historical justice. At the beginning of the year, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Ukraine changed the captions to the paintings of Kyiv, recognizing him as Ukrainian. It was added to the description that it was the Russians who destroyed his museum in Mariupol. That was the hometown of the artist. And when the process started, well, the next process is what took much faster, because a few months later, the museum also recognized Ivan Repin and Ivazovsky as Ukrainian and not Russian artists, but it wasn't always like that, as it took the same museum almost a year to rename the Russian dancer to dancer in Ukrainian dress. The process took even longer at the Ateneum, that's the Finland's largest art museum, which changed its signature months ago, recognizing Repin as a Ukrainian artist. The work lasted about 2 years and was carried out with the participation of Ukrainian Institute and the Embassy of Ukraine in Finland. As we can see, this is not always a quick process, but cultural diplomacy plays an extremely important role in this field. Outside the battlefield, the Ukrainian community is also fighting its enemy, and language has become the most powerful weapon on its path. Now, this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention. We thank Iryna for such an interesting and informative statement covering a variety of issues. It covers the decolonization practices, which are very important, as well as the statements of the artists about what was mentioned, what was kept silent, about the emancipation of the artists' manifestos and expressions that were unfortunately caused by the war, but our artists, they represent this high spectrum of pain, of challenges, drawing attention to the situation in Ukraine.
Next presentation, the following topic, music art as a resistance tool, the Ukrainian case of 2022-2023, will be presented by Dr. habilitated Iryna Tukova. Iryna Tukova is an associate professor at the Music Theory Department of the National Music Academy of Ukraine and a participant of the Indiana University Bloomington Ukrainian Non-Residential Program. Professor Tukova is the author of more than 40 articles and the monograph Music and Natural Science, Interaction of Worlds in the Epoch's Mental Habits, 17th, the early 21st century. Dear Ms. Tukova, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Levytska, for representing me. Good morning and good afternoon to all my dearest colleagues. And first of all, I want to say many thanks to the organizers of such brilliant and very, very interesting and important conference. And now I am sharing my screen. And I hope you are seeing a full screen, and I'm beginning. My presentation theme was forming as a generalization of my colleagues, composers, performance and musicologists, and my own professional experience during those 2 drastic years of the Russian full-scale invasion. In my opinion, collecting facts about art activity during the time of the Great War and observing them is the first step in creating a general mapping of the history of Ukrainian art resistance during the hybrid war. Their culture becomes a weapon as well as other armament. In this paper, I am focusing only on composers' activities among various forms of art music scene professionals' function. In general, the term resistance is actively used in different art studies dedicated to artistic activity during the time of the Russian war against Ukraine, which began in 2014. As examples, I can mention the articles by Kazak, Yakovlenko, Protas, Bulavina, and Ishchenko, Clark, among others. But in most art studies, especially by Ukrainian authors, the term resistance is understood in an everyday way. I agree with Chin and Mittelman 1997 claim that the term resistance is used, I quote, in many different ways, sometimes as a synonym for challenges, protests, intransitions, and even invasions. Resistance studies cover many different disciplines from social, politics, anthropology, gender, and feministic studies to culture and art as a part of culture. Due to the interdisciplinary core and diverse approaches of resistance studies, on the one hand, they haven't yet formed a strict methodology. Scholars discuss numerous definitions of resistance, its types and concepts. However, on the other hand, this situation provides the opportunity to flexibly utilize resistance methodology and apply it to diverse case studies. Contemporary art music is not traditionally considered as a tool of resistance. Primarily, it involves the language of art music compositions, which is not widely popular or understandable to a mass audience. Various aspects of resistance often focused on protest songs, jazz, rock, traditional, and street music. Therefore, in my research, I am utilizing various methodological frameworks developed in resistance studies. I am applying those frameworks to examine Ukrainian art music during the time of the Russian full-scale invasion. As a basis of my analysis, I have chosen the definition of resistance proposed by Chaudhary, Hvit, Marsico, and Levytska. I quote, "Resistance is not acceptance. This refusal always involves an active agent in opposition with sometimes something outside, an object, image, idea, person, or group. From a development perspective, a resistance is part of every meaning-making process involving 2 positions. When 2 or more people relate, they become the Gegenstand for each other's meaning-making. In such situation where persons make meaning of each other, they can either comply, resist each other, or resist their resistance. During the war in Ukraine, observations suggest that composers and their creativity resist their ideas propagated both by the circumstances of the war and by narratives transmitted by Russia. Those narratives are well known, including claims such as Ukraine is Russia, Ukrainians do not exist, and Ukraine cannot defeat Russia, among others. In general, artistic creativity resists the violence and death inherent in war. Through this resistance, new meanings are generated, reflecting and capturing Ukrainians' emotions, wishes, and hopes. As Frank Muller notices, I quote, "Art not only reflects realities around the artist, it also constructs those realities. Resistance affects not only the intellect but also the senses. It can be grasped in its entirety only in a combination of intellectual and sensual reception." In this context, the main question revolves around the methodological framework applicable to a case study in art music. Referring back to the aforementioned assertion by Chaudhary, Wheat, Marsico, and Williamson, a resistance process typically involves at least two individuals in opposing position. This perspective aligns with the framework proposed by Hollander and Einwoyer. Those scholars delineate three groups within the realm of resistance. I quote, actors, their targets, and interested observers, including researchers. Therefore, in the context of art music, a composer serves as an actor of resistance, a man-making process serves as a target, and an audience to whom those meanings are directed are interested observers. In my view, it is particularly significant to examine the meanings produced and transmitted by Ukrainian composers during those 2 years of full-scale invasion. Undoubtedly, the war and its terrors are reflected through musical means in various ways. However, a significant portion of compositions reimagines and indicates a path toward overcoming the traumatic experience of war. This overcoming can manifest it in different forms, such as dreams of victory, affirmation of life's continuity, belief to enlightened kindness, and so on. The titles of compositions can ever serve as evidence supporting this assertion, such as "I saw your reflection in the river mirror, you were on the other shore" by Maxim Kolomyets, "Let There Be Light" by Bogdana Frolenko, "To Victory" by Olena Ilnytska, Third Symphony Victorious by Zoltan Almaty, Concerto Grosso with the Positive by Yevhen Petruchenko, and many other compositions. And I would like to share with you a very illustrative example of resistance through art music. The piece with the title Vox Humana, or Human Voice by Roman Grigoriev was created for a Uragan Missile and chamber orchestra at the end of April 2023. I would like to note immediately that on the carcass of the Uragan missile was used, ensuring complete safety. The missile fragment kept in a small private museum of used military equipment and ammunition in Irpin. The missile was borrowed by the museum's owner to the composer. The idea to use the missile as a musical instrument came to composer's mind at the end of the April 2023. Grigoriev, original double bass player, did different experiments producing different sounds from the missile with a bow. As he says in his interview, it was a sharp and very piercing sound. For me, it sounded like death. You move the bow and the rocket screams. The composition Vox Humana was recorded in April 21, 2023, and St. Andrew's Church in Kyiv, the sacral place to all Ukrainians. Technically, it is a chance and choice composition, i.e. improvisation. Grigoriev created the plan of the piece and explained his idea to the orchestra performers. Sound of the missile gradually increased, and in such a way gradually increased sound of other orchestra instruments. The conductor directs the orchestra performance on when to change from one sound to another. Technically, the composition is straightforward, but its emotional impact is profound. To me, Vox Humana is a significant work that reveals aspects of the Ukrainian mentality. The composer doesn't propose to bombing with the missile our enemies, but he transforms a weapon to a musical instrument and tries to cope with pain and calamity. In other words, a symbol of destruction is transformed into a tool for emotional impression. And now I am proposing to you to listen to this composition. At the conclusion of my paper, I would like to quote Roman Grigoriev's words. For me personally, this performance has completely exhausted itself. I felt psychophysical relief, a purification like after therapy. Purification means a liberation from my own trauma, which I would like to offer to all people. This is the purification of our land from those evil spirits. Thank you for your attention and my acknowledgements to the armed force of Ukraine for safety and possibility to continue the researches during the war, and IU Ukrainian non-residential scholar programs for support and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tukova, for your deep insight into the art resistance topic and this brilliant music example for the audience. Thank you. And oh, I'm sorry, and you're perfect. Stick to the time limits also. So I appreciate your presentation. Last but not least, our speaker is Dr. Nataliia Andriushchenko, will present a topic dealing with cinema art entitled The Development of Creative Documentary in Ukraine During the War. Dr. Nataliia Andriushchenko is a research fellow in the Department of Arts at Ludwig Maximilians Universität LMU in Munich, Germany. She's also a journalist and independent filmmaker. Dr. Andriushchenko is also a participant of the Indiana University Bloomington Ukrainian non-residential program of this year as well. So please, Dr. Andriushchenko, the floor is yours.
Can I share my screen?
I think so. Please.
Видно мою презентацію?
Do you see my presentation?
Поки що ні.
Not so far.
Мабуть, зараз почнеться.
Maybe now it will be launched. Yes, we can see it. Just a moment.
На весь екран.
Do you see it full screen?
Not yet.
Nope.
О,
Yes, now we do it. It's okay.
Добре, починаю.
Okay, let me start. Hello, all the participants of the conference. With my today's report, I will be telling about the creative documentary in Ukraine during the war. But before I get to my topic, to the most important, let us first define what documentary cinema is and what creative documentary is, and what's the difference between them. So, a documentary film is a document that is revealed in a creative way, in this case, through audiovisual art. In documentary cinema, the main thing is the fact, the chronology. The director's main task is to illustrate a fact on the screen. That is more about TV cinema, like that. Then creative documentary is a field of audiovisual art where the boundaries of the document are blurred and where the author's point of view determines the course of the film, where the same dramatic laws and expressive means are used as in a feature film. But a feature film can be planned. You can define the shooting days, but in creative documentary, planning is rather unstable, because the main thing here is the process of observing a person or a situation, which sometimes needs time, years, to make a movie. The term creative documentary appeared in the 2000s. It was defined totally naturally by the authors and directors of contemporary documentaries themselves, and only later did this concept become a subject of study for scholars. In the West, first, and immediately in Ukraine. Festivals began to appear at the time where the main selection criteria were films made in the genre of creative documentary. The researcher of media and cinema from the Essex University, Wilma de Jong, in her work Creative Documentary Theory and Practice, defined that the production of creative documentaries is based on a special method of hybridization, mixing techniques, genres, art forms, traditional and modern methods, and techniques in a film. The author notes that creativity is a definition that has become a key term for describing trends in contemporary media production. She refers to the production of documentaries that have an author's point of view and artistic value, constituting a non-format for TV content. I need to mention that the foundation on which contemporary documentary cinema is built is common for the whole world. However, in each country, the development of creative documentary has its own pace and peculiarities. So let me define the stages of creative documentary development in Ukraine. The first one is the documentary cinema formation, 20s, 30s, then TV documentaries, 40s, 90s, and today we can see the Renaissance stage, which started in the 2010 till present. And since today's report is about the current stage of development of creative documentary in Ukraine, that is the Renaissance stage, I would like to point out that the difference between documentary cinema and creative documentary can be seen in the last two stages. From the 40s to the 90s, documentary cinema was associated with television. That is, some kind of chronicle or facts, a story about this or that famous personality, and to reveal, to open to the peculiarities of this person or some historical fact. They used many pictures, photographs, a voice-over narration. It was a kind of illustration. And I may say that the film directors maybe were using not just the wish to make a documentary, but the schedule of this or that TV channel. But with the development of technical capabilities and festival platforms, everything began to change. In the early 2000s, creative documentaries in Ukraine were called non-format because they were different and attracted the attention of the audience. And after 15 years, about 15 years have passed since the beginning of the development of creative documentaries. But in the beginning of 2024, it has changed dramatically in terms of topics, style, and form. It also has a completely different meaning for the world. Not only because of its important topics, but also because creative documentaries have a high artistic value, because it is extremely difficult and sometimes dangerous to bring a deep topic to life. But creative documentaries are playing, as of now, a very significant role in the world today, and they often counteract information lies. That's why at international festivals like Berlinale, creative documentaries are put on a par with feature films, and that's why creative documentaries have started to win major awards. So, until February 2022, Ukrainian creative documentaries were more local and mostly, I would say, kind of reflective documentaries, invitations to psychological analysis of ourselves. It was done rather deeply and professionally, but it was the analysis of yourself and the world. It was in this psychological vein that the School of Creative Documentary in Ukraine developed. For example, the film The Leading Role by the master of Ukrainian cinema, Sergei Bukovsky, in which he shows the life of his mother, the actress Nina Antonova. And watching this film, you can feel self-reflection on many aspects of life, especially from childhood, how it is connected with the today's events, with some memories or psychological aspects. In 2021, the film Stop Zemlya by Katerina Hornostai was released. The story seems to be about high school love, but raises a whole layer of topics about living the comfort zone, feeling yourself in society, becoming a person, and even the film My War by Masha Kondakova is a very gentle about three women who went to war.
Now, in February 2022, after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, everything has changed, and there was a very sharp turn in the work of artists because the School of Creative Documentary has changed its direction. The main topic turned into a war because documentary filmmakers, they film what they see, and the style of creative documentary has changed. The message is very direct and sharp. Wake up, look at the world, it will never be the same again. You can't keep silent, play along, or pretend that nothing is happening. Either you make a decision or someone will take it instead of you. There's no time. Illusions are shattered, and you will see the world as it is. Are you ready for this responsibility? So this is the message of contemporary documentary filmmaking in Ukraine. That is why it's one of the most important in the world today. Besides, creative documentaries tend to be more inclined towards non-edited cinema. I mean, there is an editing of some sort, but it's based on the logic, on the scripted sequences, so uncomfortable words or events or Russian language or some events that might offend someone are not removed or not cut. When the war started in Ukraine, the work of festivals and creative centers have suspended for some time, but as it turned out later, this did not stop the work of documentary filmmakers. This is a phenomenon today because Ukraine is currently represented by quite many filmmakers who risk their lives, but they want to show the truth. And these are not only the directors from Ukraine. For example, French director Louis Bourreau shot the film The Trenches in Donetsk region, and Philip Schaffer made the film Days of Donbass. Then Lithuanian filmmaker Mantas Kvedaravičius died during the filming of Mariupol. Unfortunately, the film was edited without him. And today, American filmmaker Sean Penn is editing a documentary about Ukraine called Superpower. Now, to the second anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, 1+1 TV, together with Alan Badoyev, presented the project Long Day. The project involved 20,000 Ukrainians who submitted their video testimonies about the war for this project. There are a lot of young filmmakers among Ukrainian kind of directors. You can even see that based on the scholarship program of Deutsche Film Academy. And in the summer of 2022, the program allocated over 5,000 euro to over 50 documentary filmmakers from Ukraine. It means like 50 new films that will be released at a certain point. So the world can see the best, among the best in documentary filmmaking of Ukraine. Besides, the masters of Ukrainian documentary filmmaking are beginning to create films in cooperation with young directors. For example, Eastern Front by Vitaly Mansky and Yevhen Titarenko. It's impossible to talk about these films simply as facts, because these films, they turn the minds upside down. And what's especially important for development of Ukraine's creative documentary filmmaking, that directors do not try to edit their films based on any sort of ideology, meaning all the positions they're shown as they are. And that means a high level of the film and a high artistic value of the film. And currently, there's different funding, and we have a special multimedia platform for foreign broadcasting of Ukraine. And every year, even during the war, this platform holds a competition among domestic film producers. In 2023, 53 projects won, including projects involving documentary films. But for the most part, Ukrainian documentary cinema today is supported by European countries and the United States. There's a lot of support programs. For example, over the period of 2024-2025, there will be 12 Ukrainian documentaries made with the support of French-German media platform Arte in cooperation with the European partners and the Ukrainian Institute. This project is called Generation Ukraine. So after the premiere and festivals, the films will be shown on the French-German TV channel Arte. There are also scholarship programs like Deutsche Film Academia, grant programs, and special funds, where films are funded on a competitive basis. It should be noted that Ukrainian films have grown in artistic value. They're distinguished by their filmmaking process. But this boom in creative documentaries is happening under extremely sad circumstances and is driven by filmmakers' desire to show what is happening in the world, in the war, and not to remain silent. And this has become a yardstick for each viewer, a self-reflection. Am I already a mass, or am I still a person able to change myself and the world? Now, despite financial support for Ukrainian documentary film production, the matter of distribution is developing rather slow, and that was the problem before the war, and it's a global issue. Documentary filmmakers, they earn almost no money from their work, and their maximum reward is the victory on a festival and the support of the audience. So it's not about the money for the film directors. Now, the most important fact is that people are very interested, and the documentaries is now being watched by bigger audience, but the distribution system still works not perfectly. And festival platforms are kind of the only place where the audience can see the creative documentaries. And today in Ukraine, there's only one documentary film festival that presents creative documentaries. That's the Doc Days International Human Rights Film Festival. In 2000, it became the starting point for creative documentary filmmaking, and that's not a format for TV. Today, the Docu Days is a multimedia platform where you can read interviews with producers and directors, learn about various opportunities for filmmakers, watch films, or listen to podcasts and lectures. But due to full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine in February 22, the organizers had to cancel Docu Days. In 2023, the festival took place, and already 51 films from 27 countries participated, including 26 Ukrainian films. For example, Chernobyl 22, directed by Oleksiy Radynsky, Mariupol 100 Nights by Sofia Melnik, King Lear, How We Search for Love and the War by Dmytro Ryshko, and Independence Day by Volodymyr Tychy. The winner of the national competition was 20 Days of Mariupol by Mstislav Chernov. In 2024, the film crew got Academy Award for Best Documentaries. That's the first Oscar for Ukraine. So let's analyze the film 20 Days of Mariupol as an example of creative documentary filmmaking. Its director, war correspondent Mstislav Chernov, and the entire Associated Press crew once again confirmed that Ukraine filmmakers are currently developing a school of non-edited cinema. Now, I'm not going to touch about the emotional part of this film because that was the most difficult film I've ever seen. But I also watched this film to define whether it was properly awarded with Oscar. So I joined the side of most reviews that this film really deserves all the awards. This is perhaps the only film where you can see and feel all the feelings and emotions that a person can experience: love, fear, despair, hatred, helplessness, courage, aggression. You mean all of them. And then the film shows how the apogee feeling grows, how a person goes through all the stages from, I don't know, like what's happening while Russia is destroying our homes, why they're taking everything we have, to a stage like take everything but just spare the lives of us and our children. And all of that is seen in the film, because 20 Days of Mariupol has a voiceover that was shot in a spirit of kind of reportage in a chronological order. It directly shows what is happening to the city, the country, and the people. And this inner resistance of the person failing to get used to the situation, all the stages when a person is unable to kind of perceive this, when it responds not how it should be, when the person is not knowing what to do. All this despair is shown as well. And The director also introduces his own inner world for the audience. He makes the film as a self-reflection. He puts a question like, what will happen, like if my daughters was asked, what have you done to stop this, to make it better? And he says that I want to use this film to make something for the humanity. This is a catharsis full film. And previously, I was very cautious and my attitudes towards films like that, because there's a lot of horror in the world, in the reality, so you don't really want to see that on the screens. But that's a different film, really, because you can see that some of the values are being developed. So you can see the rebirth of a person when you're kind of living that through together with other people. Then you already have your point as to how you're going to behave tomorrow. So I believe that this film deserves the rewards, not only because it was shot during the war, but because it is capable of changing the behavior. It is capable of kind of changing those people who consider the war as something that is becoming standard in Ukraine. That's a very strong psychological movie, and I think it's a very important, and it well deserved its Oscar. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully, I didn't take too much of the time. Thank you, Natalia. Well, indeed, you took a bit more of the time, but since we do have some time left for the discussion, so I let you proceed. And thanks. Now, in conclusion to the first this panel, and before passing the floor to Iryna Baltaziuk, I would like to say a couple of words.
First and foremost, I would like to thank all the contributors of this session. Their proposals very invaluable in the process of shaping the subject matter, the topic. I appreciate their contribution of each of the speakers because their insight and suggestions. I pass the word to our discussant, Dr. Iryna Baltaziuk, who will open the discussion and emphasize some essential aspects of the session. Let me introduce Dr. Baltaziuk. She is an associate professor at Kharkiv Kotlяревsky National University of Arts. Her research interest is focused on sociology of music, cultural policies, commemorative practices, and modern Ukrainian classical music. She's also served as an artistic education department deputy chief at the State Agency of Ukraine on Arts and Artistic Education. She is also, as well as the whole session, is a non-residential visiting scholar at Indiana University. So please, Dr. Baltaziuk, your insight and your maybe contribution to this session, please.
Thank you, Dr. Levytska, very much. If there is no, okay, I would like to switch to Ukrainian to keep this bilingual balance as well. І якщо немає заперечень, то я для того, щоб...
In order to preserve this bilingual balance, I will switch to Ukrainian. I am very grateful to the organizers for including this extremely important and interesting session to the conference. I believe that this is truly an important contribution into the perception of the processes that are taking place in contemporary Ukraine. And secondly, I am very grateful for the honor and the ability to express my own reflections based on what I've heard. And I thank to our speakers for this analytical review, which gives the possibility to kind of analyze the multi-dimensional artist response to the war. And I think it's important to underline the communicative, reflexive role which is played by the artist practices for the Ukrainian society, because it's part of what we are saying whether it's the establishment of a new mythology, as we see that this is being created by the audiovisual art, or we are talking about the establishment of new daily practices when the people are starting to sing Ukrainian national songs in subway during the missile attacks without preparing, and this becomes into a new norm, new reality, new cultural norm, I would say. I believe the art offers this symbolic environment where the new senses are being accumulated, value kind of indicators that are very important to understand how we perceive ourselves in this time, what we'll remember about this war. And it was mentioned many times, it's important for understanding this new identity that has been created now. And I fully agree to Oksana Smorzhevska that researchers and theoretical kind of analysis of these processes, of these artistic practices, is very important, just as important for the establishment of this identity as the artist manifestations. Now, that is why there's a question of methodology, and I think that's very important, because we need a new kind of optics that would be relevant to the things that we can see now. Now, what's the uniqueness in that? I have a separate question to Oksana, in fact. I understand that this is the first kind of review of the processes around the establishment of new methodology, but have you thought, is there anything unique in the processes? For example, like I had a chance to read the report earlier, and I think you haven't mentioned this. For example, this process that was mentioned, I think that was a unique feature. So if you could mention this more detailed manner, I would be greatly grateful. The second moment that I think it's worth discussing is the balance of documentary and non-documentary thing. If we're talking about the artistic responses to the war, to the context of the war, where's this dividing line between the artistic and non-artistic? Can we take those diaries like of Akulenko, can we consider texts like that as documents, as like witnesses of the war? Where is this border between the reflection of the reality and the author's messages, the interpretation of certain events in the artistic text? And I guess that's questioned to Nataliia Andriushchenko and Iryna Tukova, because in films, if we're talking about non-edited films, the documentaries, where can we hear, where can we see something that is coming from the authors? Unfortunately, the speaker has some troubles with the internet connection. We can see the attitude, the position of the author. In case of Woznitsa, that's through the establishment of dramaturgical background when he gives certain names to the chapters. In case of creative documentary, in case of non-edited film, where we can see the voice of the authors. And the second question to Iryna Tukova, what we've heard is very impressive. I remember the words from his interview that was a ritual for him, a cleansing act, if I understood that correctly.
It really impresses in different ways So how this reality is full of subjectivity? We know that from the art process. How is it full of subjectivity and how deep it delves into the artistic space? All the ways of interpretation of reality are incredibly complicated and need special optics. The third question, or I would say even the third layer I would like to discuss with you is, in the beginning I was saying how the art is playing a significant role within the process. And this is how the art, the Ukrainian art, is working for the cultural diplomacy beyond the borders. What was mentioned by Iryna Baltaziuk, in fact. It seems to me it's very substantial and important to see the changes in the perception and formation of subjectivity or agency of the Ukrainian art and the whole nation during those 2 years. And it seems to me that the role which is accomplished by the art in the shaping, in the formation of this agency is incredibly important. But what I'd like to hear, maybe Iryna has information which ideas she may have about the state, how the state supports them. As far as I understand, in the majority of cases, this cultural diplomacy is based upon, I would say, the individual initiatives or on the personalities of the artists, their freedom of will and their, in fact, manifestations. What does the state do to support these initiatives? Does the state have any strategy? Did you analyze that? Thank you so much. Thank you, Iryna. I do apologize to interrupt you because we are short of time for the answers of our participants. So I give the floor. Who would be the first to answer? Maybe Oksana Smorzhevska. Could you be the first one? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Iryna, that you paid attention to the methodology. That's really a very important aspect. And obviously that at the current moment, we do not have one and only verified methodology. For instance, I considered out of my classification that it was a kind of accumulation of my personal experience as a researcher and the developments which I have already found in this discourse. This is a kind of an attempt. This process is still ongoing, and I think there should be important interdisciplinary approaches, historical art approaches, sociological. This process is still open. As for the uniqueness of these processes, I already mentioned a bit of the caricatures, humor. So, of course, on the one hand, we have some new aspects here, a kind of chmonya image, if you remember that, which emerged as the result of this war. But it's not new, because if we look at the experience of the researchers of the World War I, World War II, or even deeper, the Cossack humor, we can see that all of that already existed. We had this defensive response of the person against the danger, and it can be seen in the proverbs, this soldier, a bit of a harsh humor, let me not quote it. And so there is lots of that, in fact. And I did not mention such a sphere, because I was short of time, as the use of images of our national heroes, writers, poets, first of all, Taras Shevchenko, of course, who is also one of the symbols. We all saw that we can see some quotations from his creative works, though it's just an imitation. And his images could be in camouflage, in military attire, or even Shevchenko as Batman, which is also the part of the new mythology, a connection between the generations, between the dead and the living and the still who are not born. It seems to me I answered all the questions. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Who would be the next one? Iryna Tukova, please. Maybe Nataliia as well, but please try to be short. About the documentary and this documentary dimension and how it is transformed into the artistic manifestation, please. Well, let me speak, because I'll try to be as quick as possible about how this reality enters the art. Looking at the missile, which I showed, by the way, here I agree with Oksana, it is not the new one. During the 20th century, we can see how the reality, beginning with printing machines and any of the trains and so on, are also entering the musical art. They play music on anything, and it's a typical practice. Let us just remember John Cage, who was playing whatever he could have under his hand. But the other thing is what they use now to play with, because what's important, which of the objects the musicians select now and which sense they bear, because what has become more relevant, or the involvement of these objects of war and their rethinking about them. What's very important for me, rethinking, deconstruction, not an attempt to kill with this missile or to launch it against someone. It is becoming a reflection of a different thing, an expression of a different thing. This is the most important thing which I tried to underline, the process of the rethinking of war, opposition to war, resistance against the war with all the possible and impossible ways, and in this way as well. That's a nutshell if I answered your question. Thank you.
Я також дуже коротко скажу, було щодо авторського.
I would also try to be as short as possible about the auteur view of the film. Obviously, the documentary depends on the individuality or personality of the film director. It depends on the film director, and the selection of the paints which he, in fact, chooses depends on his position. But being an individuality, the film director can still be objective. Vitaly Mansky is working in a softer way, in a psychological way. Even in his latest film, Instafront, he showed, together with the pictures, the real pictures of war, he showed the birth of the new life and humor, how the Ukrainians are overcoming with the help of humor and joyful position along their life. This is a victorious psychological moment. And Vitaly Mansky noticed that Mstislav Chernov is a journalist. He has a different type of thinking. He showed more facts, but he allowed a viewer to get inside his heart, inside his internal world. He showed how he self-reflects through the war and gave the viewer to do that, an opportunity to do that as well. And Serhiy Loznitsa is even more different. For instance, his film Maidan was shot and edited only with one common view. Just the person was observing, the viewer can observe and make his or her own conclusions. So we can see the auteur's view, how this film is constructed and what he emphasizes upon. Thank you. Thank you. As far as I understand, Iryna, the discussant, is happy about that. And the last question to Iryna Baltaziuk as well, about the role of the state, right? And instrumentalization by the state of this whole massive bulk of art manifestations and reactions, and the impact onto the world context. Iryna, are you still here? Yes, I am. A couple of words. Thank you for the question. Yes, surely the state now is living through the complicated period, but still we have the support of the Ukrainian Institute, different embassies of different countries, which are also involved in these processes. If we write to them, they mostly respond. Well, of course, there are examples when they ignore you, but it's very subjective. And there is a Ministry of Culture. I know that they had the State Mediatek, that is the archive of Ukrainian art. I was involved as an expert. We were creating this archive for 2 years. So the tools exist, they work, but of course, we need to get to them, and the civil society is playing an incredibly important role. The stronger the voice is, the stronger we hear it, the better the result. So we all should be involved. Thank you so much. I hope that we got all the necessary answers, however they were short. I thank all of you. It seemed to us in the beginning that we have lots of time for many Q&As, but unfortunately it looks like the time passes by so quickly.
Svetlana Melnik or Sarah to follow the next
Yes,
strong.
thank you so much, Mariana, and all of our colleagues on this really terrific panel. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with us. This was truly amazing and really enlightening and a great, great discussion. So congratulations on a really wonderful session. So I will stop the recording now of this session.